morning, everyone. As we are waiting for our legislators to come up to the stage, I encourage you to write your questions down on your index cards and hand them over to Ernie. Sorry, my notes are disorganized. I almost gave you guys a lecture on 17th century European architecture, but we're gonna talk about other things today. Greetings, my name is Lelaine Little. I am the Vice President of the League of Women Voters, Wilkes-Barre area. On behalf of our Board of Directors, I would like to welcome you all to our 2025 Legislative Brunch. This event is being recorded in its entirety by Service Electric Television and will be broadcast and then posted on YouTube. No part of this recording may be used or distributed by any person, candidate, campaign, or political group for any purpose whatsoever. Candidates may provide a link on their websites to the full YouTube video. Many thanks to Wilkes University, especially Victoria Morrison in catering and Bridget Hinta. Many thanks to our league board, all volunteers who are working the event this morning, in particular Kathy O'Neill and Dr. Ernie Trujillo. And thank you to our two state legislators. You may take the stage as soon as you are fully caffeinated, out of 12 invited, who took the time to meet with us this morning to share their thoughts and positions on a variety of issues. Eddie Dave Pashinsky will wave at you so you can recognize him. I'm sure you know him. He's quite a prominent figure in our community and attends as many events as possible, which is great to see you again today, Eddie. Has represented the 121st District since 2007. His committee service is encyclopedic, and he is a graduate of Wilkes University in music education. To Wilkes University. James Haddock.
Jimmy is retying his tie.
I see.
But he'll be here in a
He will
second.
be here. He has not run off. We don't have to lock the doors. Has served since 2022 for the 118th District, which includes parts of both Luzerne and Lackawanna counties. He also has served as mayor of Avoca and graduated from Bucknell's University Advanced School of Banking. Welcome to you both. I'm so sorry, Jim. Come on down. Price is Right style. Most importantly, audience, thank you for being here. You are the reason we have these events, and we're hoping that the information that you glean from today's event will assist you in making informed voting decisions on Election Day or in your mail-in ballot. Today, we'll spend some time talking with our legislators. Questions for the candidates will be selected from a list submitted by our audience today and by the league board. We will not have a strict timekeeper as we do in the forums, but I would ask our representatives to be mindful and concise as they answer each question to give all of us a chance to share our concerns. And we ask that you hold any applause until the end of the forum after the closing statements. So, Ernie, if you could bring me questions, please. Thanks very much. I used to work for 4 lawyers, so I'm pretty good with handwriting, so we'll see. Okay, so I will, since Jim, you're closest to me, I'll throw this question to you first, please. Will you co-sponsor, support, and advocate for House Bill 31 that amends the PA Constitution by replacing the Legislative Reapportionment Commission with an Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission?
Is the microphone on?
Microphone on.
Oh, boy.
Directly on House Bill 31, anytime you touch the Constitution of the state of Pennsylvania, I feel you have to tread lightly. It's 2 years. It has to be voted in the House and the Senate. 2 session years, so it takes a 4-year process, and then it goes to the voters. To be honest with you, the particular language in House Bill 31 is something that I am not familiar with off the top of my head. I do understand the importance of independent commissions, and there was just a large court battle. This is my second term. The year I was running, I did not know what district I was going to actually serve. There were 2 or 3 maps. 2 maps came down definitively. One was to leave it as is, and one was to change it where it finally won out. And the court decided that an independent commission did draw fair and equitable maps. But the particular language in House Bill 31, I'm unfamiliar with at this point.
Would you like to take that?
It's number 2.
Just a little button on there.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you very much. And first of all, thank you to all of you who are here today as concerned citizens. It's very important. I appreciate all the work that the League does. I mean that sincerely. And if there was ever a time that we need the citizens of America to stand up, the time is now. I also want to remind everybody, because we're being recorded, it's of, by, and for the people. This country was developed because of that premise. But it is also the people's responsibility to search for the truth and the facts. And that's why we're here. What Representative Haddock said, he's right on. Right now, there's been a manipulation of the system. I think many of you have heard of Citizens United. And for those that may not have heard about that, Citizens United was a court case that allowed now for any amount of money to be utilized in elections. We just witnessed that with one individual contributing over $250 million to an election. Ladies and gentlemen, with all due respect, I come from Nanticoke, Pennsylvania. My dad was a coal miner, served in World War II. Mom worked at J.S. Robb Shoes. $100,000 was out of the question back then. $20,000 was out of the question back then. So for people now to be contributing that kind of money, it's now taking away your power as an individual. What they have is money. What they have is a plan. What we have is more people than them. And that's why these meetings are important. So as far as the redistricting goes, that's also been a problem, because the redistricting has manipulated the numbers to keep one party in power over the other. So I have not read the verbiage to 31. The way we have so many bills that come before you, we generally focus in on the bills that will be coming up for voting. We use our system to have what's called a caucus, where we discuss all the bills and then have a much better, a full advantage of the understanding of those bills. So, like Representative, be careful changing the Constitution. Thank you.
Thank you. Following up on that question, there is a question from the League. What is your, saying as you, referring back to the subject you opened for, what is your position on the state's campaign finance laws, and what reforms, if any, would you support?
You're first.
Well, as I stated before, there's too much money involved. So everybody has a right to contribute and support your candidate, but it has to be a reasonable amount. And right now, there is no amount. They can contribute whatever they want. In the last election, Representative Haddock, you can confirm this, I believe there was one individual in the state of Pennsylvania, I believe he is the wealthiest individual in the state of Pennsylvania, donated and contributed, was it over $3 million against you, Representative Haddock? 2 million?
Yep.
Well, there was over $1 million against me. Now, with all due respect, there's no way that this guy here can come up with $1 million. For my first election, I took out a second mortgage for $50,000 and raised $20,000. It cost me $70,000 to win. And every election thereafter was minimal until it changed. And that was because of the amount of money that's being put into the system. That's also forced the other party, our party, to try to find benefactors, to be able to then compete against the billions of one guy, 2 guys, 5 guys, 10 guys. Where does our money come from? People, unions, organizations, clubs, people contributing $25, $50, and the organization collectively then has 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, 100,000, yeah, millions. And that's what's happened because of Citizens United. We've organized groups, masses of people to contribute small amounts of money in order to compete against the billionaires. So,
If you could just please clarify, so are there reforms that are being talked about now? Is that what you're saying?
yes,
Okay.
there's always reforms, there's always opposition, there's always different solutions. What does it depend on? How do we accomplish that? You can't accomplish it if the House or the Senate is controlled by a particular party that disagrees with that. That's why the people are important to be knocking on everybody's representative's door, every senator's door, and sharing your thoughts in a polite, educational way to say, listen, we disagree with this. Or we agree with this and we agree with that, but that's what it's going to take. And if you don't mind, I'd like to remind everybody, all of the people that came before us had to deal with countless problems. Whether it was health problems, wars, poverty. This is our chance now to make the changes for our children and our grandchildren. So, my question to you is, are you up to it?
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
Yes, because you're here. You're here, and that's most important. Now, we've got to reach out to our family and friends to make them aware they can't sit back. And by the way, you got to search for that truth. Can't be watching one station. Hope I answered your question.
Thank you.
Can I answer that one?
Yes, you may.
As Representative Dushinsky said, in the 118th district, which is basically what starts in Greater Pittston. Then I go into Lackawanna County, and I go all the way to Route 6 alongside. I don't have any of the city of Scranton. I go west of the city of Scranton. I go up to Route 6. So I have half in Luzerne and half in Lackawanna County that I represent. 20% of the legislature members have 2 or more counties that they may represent. My election, they estimate $3 million was spent against me. $3 million for a 2-year term that pays about $110,000 a year. I don't even know how much I make, to be honest with you. The dark money is scary. PAC money is scary in itself. So Jeffrey Yass owns the cyber charter schools, and he owns the charter schools in Pennsylvania. He's the single biggest stakeholder in charter schools, and he runs a management company. And in one of his newspaper quotes, his top executive said, when Jeffrey puts money into an election, he expects to get a return on his investment. So in Harrisburg, when we go after charter schools, and right now we're on a major, and I'm sure we might get a question later on cyber charter, this man says openly he expects a return for his investment. Now, all $3 million didn't come from him. He was the major stakeholder. Then, of course, the Republican caucus threw in some money. and dark money came in. They were from PACs that were buried, and you try to figure it out, and you can't figure it out. Who actually funds these PACs? But because of Pennsylvania being a divided legislature, and then you drive that down to the House of Representatives last year being a 1-vote majority, there was power because of the scales of getting another branch of government. 1-seat majority, the money flowed into Northeast Pennsylvania like never before. Eddie only got about 1/3 of the barrage that I got. So to your question, last year, we did pass several bills, a lot of great ideas. And they came out of the narrowly controlled Democratic House, went over to the heavily controlled Republican Senate, and they died. 3 branches of government it takes. It takes the House, it takes the Senate, it takes the governor to pass a bill and get it into the law. The Republican Senate refuses to act on campaign finance reform. We have those same bills coming back. They are tweaked, they are changed. Our leadership will go through them. We didn't vote on them yet. As you might know, in Pennsylvania, we now have a state representative that passed away. And on the 25th of March, this week, there will be a special election, and it is so important, it will decide control of the House. We are at 101 temporarily. So controversial bills this session have not run yet because they would probably be tied and lost. But campaign finance is definitely, you're talking to the guy, and there was one gentleman in the state of Pennsylvania that had more money spent on him more than me. I was the second highest target in the state of Pennsylvania, right here in Luzerne, Lackawanna County, in the whole state of Pennsylvania. Millions of dollars spent for control of that house.
Okay, so if I may summarize, if voters are concerned with the state of campaign finance reform, they need to go to their legislators' websites, find out which bills are being sponsored that address campaign finance reform, call your representative and let them know what your position is on that. Is that correct? Just want to make sure everyone feels empowered.
I'll tell you what, you know what I'd say? I'd say the League of Women Voters, your organization, your officers, you find that truth and you spread the word to your members. Again, speaking for myself, and I know Jimmy feels the same way, our door's open. You know, I represent 121st District. Jimmy and I represent all the people in our district. We don't just represent Democrats. We represent Republicans, Democrats, Independents, whatever. And our goal is to try to help, and our goal is try to improve the lives of, you know, our constituents, deal with whatever those concerns are. So your organization right now has power, and the power is in the numbers that you have. That's the number of votes, and your opinions are important. So I think as leadership, I would be looking for you to come to me and say, hey, what's the story on this? Or Jimmy and I can tell you, we're going to be going back to Harrisburg next week. We have meetings after meetings after meetings with different people coming in, whether it's educators, lobbyists from businesses, Bayer Aspirin, pharmaceuticals, they're all coming in to make their case, okay? And that's it. And you don't have to go to Harrisburg, you can come to our office. But what I'm saying, it's power in numbers. How many people are in the League of Women Voters? It's not just that one person.
If I could.
Quickly, please.
Yeah, just to follow more bulletin points. You know, a lot of people do advocacy and they do research, and I give people the world of credit. Last year there was 4,000 bills introduced, so I don't know all the numbers. This year we're up to I think 1,400 already, and it's just starting. So you can call, instead of you doing the research, you can actually take that question to a state representative, to a state senator, and ask, what bills are related to this? And we have a lot of support. We may not have the answer right then and there, but I would be willing, and I made a note, I would be willing to do the research for a group or a person to say these are the bills that would be addressing your question at this point. So we can weed some of that out and give aids, help to constituents that want questions answered.
Thank you for that clarification. Appreciate it very much. Okay, so we have 3 cards that have to do with the Department of Education. How do you view the impact of the possible or changes to the Department of Ed? How do those affect Pennsylvania public schools? How will the effects, yes, so all of these are 3 versions of the same question regarding the Department of Education and the state of Pennsylvania schools, please.
This past year in the budget, the governor rolled out $526 million in new money for our education funding. That's the top line. There's other sidelines that feed into the schools. And in Pennsylvania, we have to go back a second, we're under a court order. A Republican judge, Connie Jubelier, very conservative Republican judge, ruled that Pennsylvania was funding schools unconstitutionally. So with that, last year, we were able to put $1.1 million into the education formula, and we changed the formula. Billion. 1.1 billion, thank you, I just misspoke. And this year, because the budget's tightening, the governor came up with the top line of 526 million into that fund, about half of last year's allotment. That's under attack right in Harrisburg. So we're not even done with, we just rolled out the budget in February. February and March, we had a lot of public hearings and appropriation hearings for our own state budget. Now, in the meantime, and I'm going to use the word, chaos in Washington. We don't know what's going on in Washington. Presidential orders, there's already, many of those presidential orders have been taken to court and been blocked. As their one big beautiful bill's coming out, their budget is done. This is unprecedented times in Washington, D.C. And it's very scary to the state of Pennsylvania because $50 billion comes from Washington into the state of Pennsylvania a year. Education is one of the top lines. We don't know what he's going to be able to do because their budget, they're on a calendar year, not a fiscal year. He's trying to gut last year's budget with his presidential orders, and thank God they've been blocked at this point. So we don't know where we stand. And all of our budget prep and all of our work and all the arguing already back and forth between Harrisburg politicians on both sides of the aisle may be for nothing. Because if we lose those federal funds, folks, we don't know what we're going to do. This is serious stuff, and unfortunately, Washington's in the middle of fooling around with last year's budget. Never mind next year's budget. And significant funding comes in from the federal level. But we're working in the dark with Washington. Now, in the state of Pennsylvania, we're taking the course the governor is trying to fill our constitutional requirement that we're under a court order to fill. Now think of that. The law and order side loves to break court orders and not listen to judges. Unprecedented times. And again, I use the word chaos in Washington.
3 separate parts of government. What are they? Executive, congressional, judicial. That plan, that whole process has given everybody the opportunity to make their case and then finally come to an agreement, and then that agreement creates a result. And I want to remind everybody, how did we become the wealthiest, most powerful nation in the world? Because of that plan. Because of the Constitution, the rule of law, the balance of power, to be able to create this incredible nation that's the most powerful and the richest nation in the world. There's one other aspect of that. It's called public school. It's called education. What do I mean? Public school gives every kid, that's part of the law. You have to give every kid a chance to learn. That means that it didn't matter what your mom or dad did. It didn't matter if you were poor. It didn't matter if you had a problem. If you studied, you worked, you got your education, and then moved on to Wilkes, to LCC, to King's, to Marywood, and you became a doctor, engineer, lawyer, nurse, teacher. You got into the unions. Education was the key that developed that. But it was the freedom. America gives everybody the freedom to be able to do that. Many of your European countries, it was only the wealthy kids that were educated. So the wealthy kids could manage the businesses and the corporations. And the poor kid, you stayed poor. That's one of the big differences. Now look, I respect all forms of education. I think many of you know I was a public school teacher as a music teacher, Greater Nanticoke area, for nearly 4 decades. I saw all the kids. They came from all different aspects of life. Some kids came from families that had a beautiful house, 2 cars, and they could go to Disney World. Other kids didn't even know what Disney World was. Okay? But again, that's the importance of your public education. When I first started teaching in public school, there were no special ed kids there. Now we do. It costs money. What do I mean? Well, a special needs student has certain needs well beyond a regular kid. So they may need extra help with speaking, with reading, with listening, even mobility. And this is a major point I want to make. I have no problem with charter schools. Not at all. And I have no problem with the fact that parents can choose because their children are most important. You can choose whether you want to send your children to a public school, to a religious school, to a charter school, or to a cyber school. But you can't expect the public to pay for all of that. The public pays for the chance in public school. Over years, money has come out of the public system to help the charters, whether it's transportation, extra people going into their buildings to help out. And then cyber came along. Wow, computer. Amazing. We can learn from a computer. So now, give you an example, in the public school can provide the same cyber education for $2,000 to $3,000, $4,000 per student. What's the cyber school charging? $8,000, $10,000, $12,000. Our public schools take all special needs children. Some have minor special needs, sight, hearing, speaking. Other children are not mobile at all. So some children, maybe it only costs $10,000, $12,000, $15,000. Other kids will cost $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 because they need 2 assistants to help them. Now, the charter schools don't take those kids. They take the ones that cost the least. So what I'm saying is the public school system has the responsibility of every kid, no matter what shape, size, color, creed, or whatever. And again, that's the basis of the success of America. We can't forget that. So for the folks on the other side of the aisle, they tend to support charter. They tend to support cyber charter. That's where most of their interest is.
If I can clarify, please, and just in the interest of time, if we can get back to the question, what is the effect of these losses? And further, what are things that the state government should do to compensate for if this loss happens?
The government has two choices. We do have a fund balance. So we're going to take some of the money from the fund balance. Where'd that fund balance come from? You. It's your property tax. Where does any government money come from? You, the taxpayer. It's our responsibility to hopefully manage it appropriately. But as Representative Haddock said, when we expect a certain amount of federal dollars, and then you're not going to receive that, how do you make up that difference? Where do you make up that difference? So right now, your property tax, that was one of the major concerns. May I go on to that?
Yes.
Property tax is one of the biggest concerns, wasn't it? And it should be. That's one of your biggest bills on your property. So the way it normally works, the state's supposed to give about 50%. The feds come in with 5 to 10%, and then the locals, the rest. Well, the state hasn't been paying it 50% for the last 10, 12 years. So when you come to us, we're saying the reason your property taxes are going up because your school district doesn't have a choice. You either cut programs, cut teachers, raise your taxes in order to provide the education, transportation, et cetera, for those kids who are the future. But you know what? We could have done this. The Senate could have done this. The Senate for 30 years has been Republican and refused to fix that, until that court case. Wilkes-Barre area was one of the schools that took this to court and won. And it showed that the state wasn't doing its job, and that's why your property taxes went up. So life and the organization and the management of the school system between money, academics, etc., is based on balance. And it was out of balance. Governor Wolf tried. Governor Shapiro was able to, because of the fund balance, provide 1/6 of what's needed. That court case said the school districts were underfunded by $6.6 billion. Last year, we came up with $1.1 billion, and what did that do? Your property taxes shouldn't have gone up. Your school districts began to get paid what it's supposed to. They began to rehire. Programs were reinitiated, and the kids were getting more. Sorry about that, but I had to get it off my chest.
I need to answer.
Yes,
that.
while Jim is formulating his response, if you have a response to this, continue to write on your index cards, please, and Ernie will go around and make another round to collect any additional comments from the audience. Go ahead.
The fear of the unknown. I think the question was more towards Washington. We don't know how much they're going to cut. We don't know where they're going to cut. We don't know what support services they're going to cut. Eddie gave the answer, and I gave the answer that in Pennsylvania, we're trying to backfill what has already been shorted to our local school districts. And I'll give you an example. The new budget by the governor is about $51.5 billion. Last year's was almost $47 billion, $47.6 billion. So the governor has increased all the line items that he's increased, and he's increased spending. In Harrisburg, they're screaming, you can't spend this extra money. You can't touch the rainy day fund. You can't touch the reserves. And we do have to tell the truth, folks. We do have a structural deficit in our budget. That means we have to take money from the bank to fill the hole. Pennsylvania must balance its budget, unlike Washington. Washington can go into a deficit and borrow, and we're in trillions of the debt. Now, if Washington cuts us billions, We don't have it. Then it's gonna get pushed to your local school districts. That must. And if you don't, and where do they get their money from? About 50% of their funding comes from the state, and 50% of their money comes from homeowners and taxpayers. Anybody that pays a property tax, businesses and homeowners. This is scary times, and taxpayers have to realize what's going on in Washington because we don't have the money in the bank. But they cut us tens of billions of dollars, and we're only talking about schools now. Now we're going to talk about healthcare in a few minutes, I'm sure. Billions of dollars he's fooling around with in Washington. We don't have it, and it's going to be on your backs. Or services are drastically going to be cut. And we're talking about cuts to our students. But again, the fear of the unknown, because the presidential orders aren't working, and they didn't pass their one big, beautiful bill yet.
All right.
Good.
Thank you.
Hey, we're a hell of a team.
Okay, to follow up on that, okay. It's clear that this is from the board, it's clear that the state needs more of these professionals that we're talking about, nurses, teachers, doctors, veterinarians, skilled professionals. What more can the state do to attract and support, and we're moving from the elementary level to the university level. What more can the state do to attract and support PA students attending PA universities, majoring in these fields, and what can the state do to encourage them to take jobs in Pennsylvania?
Is that yours first?
Well, that's a wide-ranging question. We have done a lot of incentives in Pennsylvania in the last 2 years to help students become student teachers. We've given stipends, we've given tax credits. I believe the question even mentioned nurses. We have a work shortage, and it's perplexing to us. We have been innovative. We have tried to allow licenses from out of the state be recognized in the state of Pennsylvania for nurses to practice. It's called a compact. We've done things like that. We have done so much innovation. We have tried to pass some labor bills that would increase working conditions. Many of the items that we have done in the House goes to the Senate, and they don't pass. So this session, we're back at it again. And again, in Governor Shapiro's rollout, which again, 47.6 billion to now 51.5 billion. We've increased stipends for student teachers to retain. We've even, there's things in there like the raising the minimum wage to try to get people to work in certain areas. And everything we've tried, not everything, I shouldn't say that.
Oh, we passed that.
We've passed, much of what we've passed has died in the Senate. Now the governor's coming in with a bunch of new programs because we recognize all those areas as needing help and incentivizing. But again, when we increase the budget to incentivize the workforce, we're spending more money. The other side of the aisle blocks it. And I'm sure you've heard Governor Shapiro say this. Pennsylvania, last session, was the only divided legislature in the state of Pennsylvania. And that causes some things to be blocked. That's politics. That's government in action. You hopefully get a better product. This past election cycle, much to everybody's surprise, one state has a divided legislature. Yet again, it's Pennsylvania, the only state in the nation that for the next 2 years will have a divided legislature. And we have to work, and one of the things we're doing and I know our leadership is doing this, and I know the governor's doing this, they're already going into the Senate leaders, and they're talking, and they're trying to do some trades, and they're trying to get some kind of, instead of having a budgeted pass, we're working on a lot of good bills for all those issues that you brought up that was wide-ranging.
What are we talking about?
Nurses, doctors, teachers,
So-
shortages.
Representative Haddock gave you a real good overview of how government is trying to incentivize people to go into various vocations. If you don't mind, I'm going to give you mine. It's called the delayed payment plan. A lot of kids don't go to college because they don't have the money to pay for it. That's why we have private colleges and universities, state colleges and universities, community colleges. And the prices are different. This is my alma mater, fabulous. I hate to tell you what my tuition was when I went here compared to what it is now, but, and I'll pass on that. But the point I'm making is we have to become creative on how we can incentivize and get these people into various educational programs so that then they can fill the jobs that we need. So it's called the delayed payment plan, and that means a student that's accepted at a college, university, whatever one, could be a community college. If they maintain their scholastic requirements, attend school, maintain their scholastic requirements, they do not have to pay one dime of that tuition until they graduate. When they graduate, they are pretty much guaranteed a job. So if you graduate as a nurse or a teacher, we know we need them badly. Now that they have the job, that's when they begin to pay back their loan, but interest-free for a period of 10 years. Now what does that do? That keeps them here. I don't want them to get their degree and then go to another state, because that happens. So the idea would be we're making it financially feasible for them to be able to pay back their education loan, buy a car, maybe even buy a house. What does that mean? That means they are now contributing back to society with their purchase power, their taxes. So they are now contributing back. So it's not borrowing. I mean, it's not a grant where you're just going to give away state funding. It's a revolving grant where now they begin to pay it back, and that money's now going to go to the next group of people that need it. Okay? I have been involved in a lot of conversations. We're getting closer and closer to get this bill to come out as best as we can. If that passes, that can become the model for just about every vocation. Again, doesn't cost you any money because of the fact that they're paying it back. Interest would occur after the 10 years, and like I said, they'd have to stay here and contribute back to Pennsylvania. So my question is, does that sound fair?
Yes.
What do you think? They're going to pay it back, okay? And Jimmy, I'm sorry, Representative Haddock already gave you a whole bunch of stuff on various incentives. They're even giving incentives to cooperating teachers to help teach those student teachers more, different courses, $10,000 grants that are coming out to try to help them with the system. But again, the cost of education is very high. That's
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
We have a couple of related questions on making Pennsylvania more hospitable and desirable for places to live, including there is a question on the Build Back Better funds for Pennsylvania roads. And then the board had a question regarding the rail line between Scranton to New York City. So if you'd like to tackle either of those
You wanna take that
transportation-related
first?
questions, please.
Go ahead.
We'll start with the railroad. Governor Shapiro went all on board, pardon the pun, for the railroad. And as you know, it's driven with a lot of federal funds, major federal funds. And luckily, elections have consequences, right? We received a new congressman. Matt Cartwright was a champion. He's on the railroad board. He did so much work. He stayed in place, and he's staying interested in bringing the railroad home. We're glad for that. I did see where Congressman Bresnahan this past week met and pledged his full support for the railroad. So we have a good victory there. And I don't know where the new senator stands because, again, Bob Casey, like Matt Cartwright, really, well, he's from Scranton, so figure it out, right? But that railroad does prove to be an economic boost for the area, vital. It gives us another leg in our transportation wherewithal to bring in business and industry and even tourism back into Northeast Pennsylvania. So as a state, we're doing whatever we can, and I know Secretary Mike Carroll, who was my predecessor, and many of you guys, he was at these breakfasts before. He is, we tease him, we say now he's the railroad conductor of the state of Pennsylvania. So I believe that project, I'm very impressed. While it was stagnant for a lot of years, everybody thought, they did some marvelous work in the backdrop. They actually went through historical and environmental studies, and they went after a lot of easements that they needed to complete the line. So I have to give them, I was very impressed when I became state representative and had an update. They really moved that along. That Lackawanna County Railroad Authority is doing a fabulous job with that. And now again, the governor and the federal, but we do need our federal partners again to continue to fund that project, because that's where most of the money comes from. So we've got some good news this past week on that project, although again, McCormick, let's see where the senator comes out and weighs in on that, and I'm sure with the help of God he will. PennDOT, so much of the infrastructure plans in Pennsylvania, the money came from the feds, and we were able to fix more bridges the last few years than we ever have. And there's another major meeting with PennDOT on the 5-year plan coming out shortly, and we'll get another update. But many great projects. And in my district, from Avoca to Scranton, we're looking at adding a lane north and south, 3 lanes. And that project is tabbed at $600 million. It'll take years to accomplish, but it's being developed and drawn as we speak. It's drawn actually, and we're going through the processes again. So there's some great things for northeastern Pennsylvania. And again, Governor Shapiro picking a man that was very knowledgeable with PennDOT matters from the Northeast certainly helps us. Common sense would tell you Mike Carroll knows Luzerne and Lackawanna County and all of the Northeast. And we're so glad to have the governor there and Secretary Carroll there to drive these matters home for us.
Representative Haddock did a great job explaining all that. I can recall, I think it was 7 years ago, going up to the Poconos with Congressman Cartwright at that time. He's been working on this thing for 7, 8, 9 years, whatever. And it's unfortunate that he's not there to see it come to fruition, but he is on that board. So that will help with our traffic problem, and I think any of you that have been on 81 between Scranton and Wilkes-Barre and a little bit beyond, you're in 2 lanes of traffic that's going at about 10 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour, 30 miles an hour. Whoop, you're stopping. Pennsylvania is blessed with a whole bunch of great resources. One of them is water, and because of that, we have more bridges, I think, than just about any state, over 4,000 bridges, and of course, they need repair. We have over 48,000 miles of road. Again, that's huge compared to other states. And the cost in repairing them and putting new roads in is enormous. That's why we need those federal dollars. Couldn't do it just on the state. So, hope he answers your question.
One of the questions specifically asked, are there Build Back Better funds left in Pennsylvania for these repairs?
I think there are.
I'm not sure on that.
I don't have a number on that. But again, Pennsylvania, by the way, was one of the only states that did have a fund balance compared to some of our surrounding states. The question again comes back to what kind of federal dollars are going to be removed from the state. That is the problem. And I'm sure all of you understand, anybody that has to create a budget, you're basing your budget on your income, where you're getting the money from, and of course your needs, what it's costing you. So every school district, the state, every department, whether it's human services, healthcare, education, have federal dollars. If those dollars don't come forward, then what do? So it's still up in the air.
Thank you. Okay, there is one question here on election reform. What types of election reforms do you support? And I'll just leave it at that.
You want that one?
Again, this country is based upon your vote. So number one, your vote must be protected. The voting operation must be honest and secure. And whatever we have to do to make that happen, we should. But I also think our lives have changed dramatically. I think you'll agree with that. Whereby it's no longer a typical thing to be able to go to vote on a Tuesday. People are away. People are traveling. They have businesses. What have we done with our servicemen since the late 1800s? Vote by mail. That mail has to be secured. They have that right for that vote. There's a way to do it. Okay? There's a way to do it right. There's a way to make sure it's secure. And we have to be flexible enough to be able to accommodate the people that can't be there on Tuesday. They can't take that time off. They're emergency people. They're people that have to plan ahead and be able to make their ballot accessible to the voting bureau safely. So I have no problem with drop boxes as long as they're safe. Cameras, locked up area, made it safe. Why would you not want to make it convenient? Okay? We've done everything, make it convenient. Like look at the turnpike, you don't have to stop anymore to give them money. You just drive through, and then they arrest you. But my point to you is voting is absolutely imperative, it's precious, and it needs to be respected and secure. That's it. Whatever we have to do to make sure your vote counts.
I think that voting is just what makes America great, part of the fun. We are great because we vote. We elect our leaders. So Pennsylvania actually has some of the strictest voting laws in the nation. Believe it or not, down south, they allow early voting. They allow instant registration, and then you can go vote. We know what we're born and raised with, and sometimes we don't study what's going on across the country. And there are many red states that have more liberal voting laws than Pennsylvania. But yet, we fight in Harrisburg. We passed so many bills for early canvassing, automatic registration. They go over to the Senate, they die. And what does the other side want? ID, voter ID. So again, there's different levels. And right now in Pennsylvania, because last year when we won the House, it was shell shock. It was the first time in almost 20 years that a House and the Senate wasn't controlled by the Republicans in a row. And then they thought, well, we'll get through 2 years and we'll beat them back. That was a fluke. And they'll take guys out like Jim Haddock. That's why the money flowed. Luckily, guys like Jim Haddock and Representative Frank Burns, who needs a shout out by me, he's an amazing man in a much tougher district than mine, and he wins year after year. Great, great guy. So we have been able to block voter ID. Now, our leadership, and we have a very progressive leadership, we're talking, and that's what it's about, folks. We always say, let's meet to the middle. I say I'm a moderate. Some people say I'm the Republican in the caucus. But we're talking in Harrisburg now. There's many ways to get voter ID. And our speaker, who's a very staunch advocate of voting rights, knows that we need pre-canvassing, knows we need registrations. So there are high-level talks going on in Harrisburg now. And much to the Senate's credit, now we'll give them credit, they said, we'll talk to you about those matters because this is tough on the county systems. But they want voter ID. So hopefully the deal gets worked out that if there's voter ID that's not too obtrusive, that's readily available to prove who you are when you go to the polls, if our leadership comes to us and explains to us exactly what the issue is and what the workout is going to be, you may see some major movements in Harrisburg on both voter ID and getting more access to voting in Pennsylvania. And if we can compromise, that's what it's all about. Those details aren't out on the floor yet, and trust me, it caused dodge in our caucus over voter ID. But you just can't be cantankerous on both sides. You have to sit down and have a conversation. And that's what our leadership is doing with the leadership of the Senate right now on this very important matter.
Thank you. A couple of other questions regarding the election system are things like processing deadlines and primary dates. What's being discussed in Harrisburg about adjusting those dates? Need more specific?
Well, I think that's what I just talked about. So that would be, can we pre-canvass? That was the gist of the question when you're saying?
Yeah, sorry. So the question is, are there changes in processing deadlines, codifying drop boxes, moving primary elections?
Moving primary elections.
I'm just reading.
No, I just want to make sure I heard it right.
Yes, moving
so again,
primary
multiple
elections.
questions. Again, I think I just answered that question. I do not know anything about moving on a major level. There's always a bill out there that says we should go later or earlier in the year to put Pennsylvania more, especially with the presidential election, more in the limelight on the national level, because then you can maybe help set an agenda of the person running for president. So there's always talk about moving Pennsylvania primaries forward. And of course, the backlash is, well, it's cold though. So I don't think that's ever really going to happen unless we can start automatic registration sooner and maybe pre-canvassing earlier and giving our counties the right to start counting votes a week early. And that's the deal that I think they're looking at. And again, we have to see what they come up with. And these are high-pressure talks. So as long as they're talking, that's all well and good. Don't know if I'm going to support it yet because I didn't see it. But if it's a good deal and it gets us extra rights, sometimes you have to give and take. And till I see the details. But that issue is being talked about on a very, very high level in Pennsylvania.
If we move the election from Tuesday to Saturday, would that be easier for people? I think for some people it would. Okay? The pre-canvassing, we use that term, pre-canvassing. It means you're counting the ballots. What do you mean? Well, before you didn't have mail-in ballots. Well, now we do. Well, what happens if you have 5,000 mail-in ballots? Well, how long will it take 5 people to count 5,000 ballots? It becomes mathematics. And what we were trying to do, we have several bills. I have a bill. It depends on the amount of ballots that you have to count. So here in Luzerne County, maybe it's going to be 40,000, 30, 40,000. You go in Philadelphia, it's $300,000, $400,000. But now, we also have a machine. That machine can do a lot of stuff that we didn't have before. So we're still in that transition period of trying to find what the right system is. But my opinion is, life has changed dramatically. Before, we used to work from 8 to 4 or 9 to 5. You had the weekends off. It's not that way anymore. Life is totally different. So we have to become creative, but also fair and make sure everything is secure.
Thank you. Okay, continuing with government operations, several lawmakers have proposed creating a Pennsylvania bipartisan commission or agency like the DOJ that is currently operating at the federal level. What is your position on this proposal?
A commission?
A bipartisan commission or agency like DOJ, so the Efficiency Commission, and that's from our board.
There's no one in this room that's against waste, fraud, and abuse. I'm sorry, you're all against the waste, fraud, and abuse. It's how we determine it, how we address it, how we correct it. And DOJ is most significantly with him and his chainsaw, just ripping stuff apart. There's no way any of us would maintain our job if we conducted business like they are. We'd have been fired a long time ago. The massive mistakes and errors that they're making are beyond belief. What's lacking is courage by so many people that have the responsibility to identify what's right and what's wrong and what needs to be done. Representative Haddock and I mentioned many times, we represent everyone. We represent all Americans. Yes, all Americans aren't going to believe in the same thing. Somebody likes vanilla, somebody likes chocolate. Okay. But here, what's happening is they are destroying our system that has helped us become the wealthiest and most powerful. And I'm most upset at my colleagues, all of which we put our hand on a Bible and take an oath, do solemnly swear to protect, defend the Constitution of the United States, so help me God, and the Constitution of Pennsylvania. Stand up, please, when there's something wrong. Stand up, please, and fight for what's right. That's the kind of stuff that's missing here. DOJ. I like the idea. Okay. I like the idea. Let's find out waste, fraud, and abuse. We have no money for waste, fraud, and abuse, but not to massively rip things apart. We're talking here, how do we budget if we're going to lose the federal dollars? How do we budget for our roads, our bridges? How do we budget for health care? How do we budget for education? Can't. You can't really, because you don't know what you're going to get. So it changes everything up. Sorry for a little passion here, but that's the fact.
I'd just like to add, there are some bills that were out, and I didn't see the one that said bipartisan. Anytime you say bipartisan, depends on the committee and the breakout, and that's, let's talk about it. Nobody, as Eddie said, wants waste or fraud. But I'm gonna read something, and I just lost it. We have a new leader of the House on the Republican side. And here's a quote, Republican leader Topper to Governor Shapiro. Let the laid-off federal workers go into the private sector, not making state government a sanctuary for adrift bureaucrats. That's what we face in Harrisburg. People that applied at the Social Security office to keep federal funds flowing into our seniors' pockets that were there for 2 years or less got laid off. The Tobyhanna Army Depot lost 147 people that got laid off. And they get called adrift bureaucrats. That's your national defense, that's your Social Security. Eventually, people aren't going to get their new Social Security checks, and our national defense, they're laying off in Tobyhanna. Tobyhanna is the largest employer in Lackawanna County, is Tobyhanna. In Luzerne County, I believe it's the third largest employer, even though it's in Monroe County. So when you compare it to Doge, that's a little tough. But anytime we could save money and root out fraud or extra jobs, we can eat them up through attrition and do a layoff properly and cut services properly, okay. And that should be done every day. I challenge the managers in the state of Pennsylvania to do that. Every day they should be doing that in their job. And they should be feeding that up to the secretaries. And we should be having those conversations on a constant level. So if there's any major bloat, it should be cut out on a daily basis. So I really, if the commission wants to look into it, if it's bipartisan, all right, we'll do it. But I think it's more a soundbite, folks.
Can I add on to that? Jimmy has a lot of points that made there is very important. We just developed another commission that's bipartisan, bicameral, the whole 9 yards, to deal with population loss in rural Pennsylvania, population gain in urban. Well, commission is a standard way of bringing people together who have all different forms of experience and knowledge to try to find solutions to the problems that you're facing. Okay? So, yeah, we definitely support bipartisan commissions to address the issues.
Thank you. So it is 11:10. I would like to, I know that our legislators have another appointment to be at on this square today, so I want to thank you on behalf of the League of Women Voters of the Wilkes-Barre area. The Legislative Brunch session will be broadcast on Service Electric Television, Channel 9 at 8 o'clock on March,
I believe Wednesday night.
okay, on Wednesday night of next week. And the Luzerne County Government Programming YouTube channel the following day. A link to that video will be posted on our League website. Please remember to vote in the primary on May 20, whether by mail or in person. And please consider joining the League, a nonpartisan organization. Membership is open across genders as the League works to educate the community about voting rights and the democratic process. Thank you so much for attending today. We'll see you next year.
Again, thank you, all of you, for being here. Thank you. Thank you so